Hello and welcome to the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center. I am Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. I am the founder and the spiritual director. Now, as you are sitting there joining us, you may have questions, any number of questions, such as, who am I? How did I get here? Spiritually integrated arts means what exactly? What is a teaching center? Well, what is Centers for Spiritual Living? What is that? What does that even mean? Or New Thought, or religious science, or science of mind and spirit? You may have any number of questions about this specific community, about the parent organization, CSL, our philosophy, our teaching, our liberation theology. Any number of questions. Feel free to send an email. We look forward to connecting more and building our virtual community, our global community. And if you haven't connected yet on social media, feel free to do so. This is your invitation now. Also, did you know that all of our Sunday messages are archived on our YouTube channel? You can watch it anytime. Now, questions about anything, such as becoming a member. What does that mean? What does membership entail? And if you live somewhere far and already belong to a spiritual community, can you be a member of more than one? The simple answer is yes, you can. Just like you can shop at more than one grocery store, you can attend or be a member of more than one gym. We are building beloved community. So you can do both. You can be a member of both. You can be involved with both. That's what being in spiritual community means. So we welcome you. We invite you. We are so appreciative that you have found this community and that you have joined us today. We bless you. We love you. We welcome you. Live long and prosper. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of our Sunday message. Love you. Connect with you soon. Blessings. Namaste and greetings. So we are well into spring now, huh? April. Today's theme, continuing our conversation of giant gentleness. Today we are talking about the other in love. Now, we could think about this in a couple of ways. We could say, I'm in love with, and then there's the other in love. Like I'm in love with Star Wars, and there's another in love with Star Trek. We could think of it that way. We could also think of simply the other, focusing not necessarily on there being two different in love with, but that there is another way of looking at what it means to be in love. Nonetheless, people are lovely when we are kind, when we are loving, when we are compassionate, when we act from that energy of what it means to be humane. People are loving in terms of that. And yet, we can also be fickle, opinionated, critical, judgmental. The question is, can we help ourselves? In other words, one, can we help ourselves? Can we change this in order to be more lovely, more loving, more compassionate, more gentle? And can we help ourselves? Like, is it normal and natural to be fickle, opinionated, and judgmental? Can we help ourselves? So often we love the idea of blaming others for whatever's going wrong. You made me mad. The country's going to hell in a handbasket because of this political party or this political leader or this ideology. Blaming something or someone else. And yet, once again, can we help ourselves? Because blaming does not heal anything. Now, we can hold people accountable without the judgment, without the blame. Because once again, the judgment and the blame gets in the way of our healing. Can we help ourselves? If we truly want to transform, if we truly want to heal, then our invitation is to really go to a place of understanding. What does it mean to be gentle with ourselves? Because when we are gentle with ourselves, we can't help but to be gentle with others. We can't help but to apply gentleness to our lives, to our relationships, to all of the ways that we show up. And it is precisely from that place of applying our gentleness that we are able to make transformative, evolutionary, and healing changes, because we are making gentle, transformative, life-affirming choices and decisions that affect not only our individual lives, but the collective, including the planet. Remember that Earth Day, this is what we are doing, applying our gentleness to all. Pema Chodron offers us, we habitually erect a barrier called blame that keeps us from communicating genuinely with others. And we fortify it, we strengthen this barrier with our concepts of who's right and who's wrong. We do that with the people who are closest to us, and we do it with political systems, and we could add more. We do it with educational systems and theological, religious systems, with all kinds of things that we don't like about our associates and our society. It is a very common, ancient, well perfected device for trying to feel better. Blame others. Blaming is a way to protect your heart, trying to protect what is soft and open and tender in yourself. Rather than own that pain, we scramble to find some comfortable, safe, neutral, or numbing ground of existence. Who in your life have you blamed that you no longer blame for whatever? What would it mean to not blame someone for whatever? What would it entail? What would it change to, rather than blame, hold someone accountable? If it's possible to hold them accountable. Because there are people who may have already transitioned. I cannot hold my parents accountable for the things I blame them for because both of them have made their transition. So if I was tempted to blame them, the reason that I, whatever in my life is because both of my parents were alcoholic. Okay. And you're 58 years old now, and both of your parents are dead. So what is blaming them doing for you now? And in terms of holding them accountable now, what does that look like? What does that mean? Holding them accountable means I take responsibility for where I am today. I work on my healing process today. I work on my forgiveness process today. I work on whatever it is that I need to work on today. I hold myself accountable. And in doing so, I create a space where I no longer need to blame them. I can name it for what it is. Yes, both of my parents were alcoholics. Yes, they may have said this and did this and did this. And yes, it may have had this effect on the 8-year-old me or the 18-year-old me. Yes, it impacted me in this way. And today I choose that which is different. I choose that which is life affirming for me today. And in so doing, I set them free of the energy that tethers. See, blame keeps us connected. It tethers us to the person, the situation. Because every time I say it's their fault, I pull them into the frame of reference as though their impact has to continue to impact me today. And it doesn't. The scar that I have right here on my wrist from when I burned myself, I don't know, I think I was frying bacon or something, but whatever it was, I know I was cooking something. This burn, because it was a grease burn, this burn doesn't hurt. The scar is still there. And the memory of, sort of the memory of what caused it is still there. See, my parents' impact may have left a scar. Some school teachers' impact may have left a scar. The bullying may have left a scar. But every time I pull it into the frame to blame, I am reopening the wound to keep it alive. I need not do that. I am allowed to be gentle with myself, and being gentle gives the wound the space and the energy to heal. So, who in your life have you blamed? What did you blame them for? What are you currently, and who are you currently blaming for any number of things? And if we trace blame all the way back to the beginning, per se, you know, many in our culture and society, as a Judeo-Christian society, blame Eve for the fall of mankind. And I specified mankind because that's what our toxic patriarchy refers to it as. We don't say humankind. Eve, the woman, was weak, and due to her weakness, tempted her husband, the man. And due to her temptation, he fell. And therefore, all of mankind fell. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. But metaphysically, we are reminded that blaming Eve, blaming the serpent, blaming the tree, blaming God for putting the tree in the Garden of Eden in the first place. What does that have to do with me right here, right now, today? So let's agree that in this moment we will no longer seek a scapegoat. We will no longer choose to incriminate anyone, including ourselves. There will be no more finger pointing to say it's your fault or it's their fault. Now, we can, once again, name it for what it is, holding them accountable. So we can go way, way back in the time machine of life and say, it's to blame. We blame white supremacy for the invention of chattel slavery. We can blame. Or we can say, based upon what we do and what we talk about in terms of, consciousness, there is a certain consciousness that these people, individually and collectively, had. And as a result of their consciousness, these are the actions. As a result of their mental equivalent, these were the actions, these were the policies, these were the laws that they put into place. And as a result of these policies, these actions, these laws, it impacted this other group of people in this way. So we can point to identify the mental equivalent, the through line that we can trace those thoughts, those words, those feelings, those actions impacted in this way. So we can point to identify that coat. But I'm not pointing at the coat to blame it. I'm not pointing at it to shame it. I'm pointing to identify. So rather than pointing fingers to blame, rather than pointing fingers to shame, rather than scapegoating, as Dwight D. Eisenhower said, the search for a scapegoat is the easiest of all human expeditions. In other words, it's easier to find a scapegoat than to dig beneath the surface to hold whatever, whomever, accountable. So if we're going to point a finger, let's point to identify and then transform and heal rather than blame. Historically, a scapegoat was literally a goat in which a community would put all of the blame upon for their sins. And then traditionally it would be sacrifice to cleanse them, which is why Jesus, being the lamb that was slain, it was a blood sacrifice that cleansed and purified and absolved humankind, those who accept Jesus, of their sins. So rather than, once again, rather than blaming, let's identify. Rather than criticizing and judging an individual or a group, rather than doing that, let's switch the energy to accountability. Let's identify behaviors and change them. Let's identify the behavior, trace it back to its consciousness, shift the consciousness, which then changes the behavior. There's a television show, a reality television show you may or may not be familiar with called My 600-Pound Life. And the bariatric surgeon, physician, Dr. Now Zardin, but they abbreviate it and call him Dr. Now. He encourages the patient to identify, why do you eat the way that you eat? What inspires your current eating habit that created a 600-pound body? And the vast majority, if not all of the times that I have ever watched an episode, every single individual identified some form of trauma or pain, that food became the medication, food became the thing of comfort. And Dr. Now encourages them to identify that, because when you can identify the pain, the triggers, the trauma, the consciousness, then you can start to retrain the consciousness to have a healthier relationship with food, which is ultimately a healthier relationship with their own selves, intellectually, emotionally, physically, socially, etc. So rather than scapegoating, it's their fault that I'm 600 pounds. Yes, their abuse of me impacted me in this way, and I did this, and now I do this, and I'm changing it and do this, which means I must shift my mental equivalent. Scapegoating is not going to afford us that ability. Dr. Holmes says compassion and caring are the ties that bind us together in mutual understanding and in the unified attempt to uncover the divinity in each other, or the divinity of each other, because it's not just in us. So let's pause. Gentleness, compassion, and caring. Gentleness is the tie that binds us. And gentleness affords us this opportunity to have mutual understanding and a unified attempt, a unified course of action whereby we are recognizing and nurturing and supporting one another to be our divine selves. Compassion and caring. Blame refuses to allow us to step into the neighborhood of compassion and caring. because blame pushes out. Compassion and caring brings in. Dr. Holmes goes on to say, compassion is the most gentle of all human virtues, for it is the outpouring of the divine givingness through all. Gentleness is the activity of the universe, nurturing, supporting, loving all. And when we are in alignment with it, when we are acting in alignment with it, when we are embodying it, then we are in perfect unification, perfect alignment with the truth of all that is. So the other in love is recognizing that truly there is no other for us to separate, segregate, or compartmentalize. Those people are to blame for. It's their fault that. Gentleness, compassion, caring says, pause, why do I feel what I feel about those people? Why do I feel and think what I think about them? And then transform that. Because, see, there's nothing wrong with me saying, this is my brother, this is my other brother. Other or othering isn't necessarily the problem. Because in the world of form, there is duality, and there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with recognizing the distinction between me and you and them and them. There is nothing wrong with that. In the same way that I can look at an orange and an apple and I can distinguish between the two. I don't have to merge them together and say there is only one fruit and that fruit is God and that fruit is me. What? What? That makes no sense. Correct. So, orange and apple, grapes, watermelon, they're separate. They each have their own divine expression as grapes, as watermelon, or apples, or whatever. So rather than vilifying other, it's those darn bananas. It's their fault. Yeah, I know. If it wasn't for carrots, the world would be such a better place. What? What? See, it sounds silly to even say it in terms of fruits and vegetables, but we do that with people, do we not? So, gentleness, compassion, and caring invites us to recognize where is that within me that will not gently, compassionately, and caringly hold accountable who and what I need to hold accountable, while also saying what is mine to do to shift the consciousness to heal individually and collectively. What is mine to do? Well, one, mine is to understand that love is kind, as Dr. Holmes said. Love is gentle, and love is understanding. I don't like this next word, tolerant, but we'll use it since it's, a quote from him. So it is tolerant of others and reaches back through indifference and coldness to life, to something warm and pulsating that is at the very center of everything. So love is accepting of others. I accept you as a human being. Your actions, your behavior, we hold accountable. You did X, Y, and Z. We hold you accountable, whatever that entails. If it's punishment, quote unquote, then it's equitable and just punishment, not cold, callous, indifferent punishment, simply punishing for the sake of punishing because we are a judgmental species. No, that doesn't do anything except further the hurt and the harm. So if we're going to punish you, then the punishment simply is we hold you accountable. And we do what we need to do to help shift the consciousness, to help heal, to help transform, so that your actions change. But we can't do that if we are not willing to be in the gentle energy of love, which is kindness, which is understanding, which is acceptance, which is the energy that gives us the ability to go to that very place where the center of everything is. There is only one mind, and that mind is God. Only one life, and that life is God. And that life and that mind is your life and your mind right now. We are invited to go to that place of truth, and then to go to that place of truth, and then to exist from and embody that place of truth, and then. Because when we are more connected there, we have no need to point and blame. We have no need for a scapegoat. We have no need to escape whatever this pain or anger or whatever that is. We have no need to escape it. We have the ability to be present with it, to heal it and transform it, and hold others accountable as needed, because we are operating from the energy and from a place of love. Gently moving through life, tenderly moving through life. Breathe. Dr. Holmes says, none of us is as perfect in expression as we ought to be. You hold on, breathe. I know. So the challenge to each of us is to be great enough to rise in love, to rise in charity through understanding, kindness, compassion, gentleness. Now, I want us to think about this in terms of you are perfect. Because, see, when we think of imperfection, then we are thinking of blame and judgment. So rather than thinking in terms of imperfection, think in terms of I'm perfection. I am perfection. I am that which God is. And in this human form, there are going to be things that I do that are less effective. There are going to be meetings that I miss, that I'm late to, for whatever reason. There are going to be foods that I burn, for whatever reason. There are going to be times that I didn't step on the mat after coming in from the snow or the rain, and Tracy looks at me like, you're tracking snow in the house, for whatever reason. And nonetheless, the I am, that which is the truth of my being, is perfection. Note, I did not say it is perfect. I am perfect. I am perfection personifying itself. The absolute of me is wholeness, perfection, and completeness. Now, how I live that, it's a different conversation. So that even when I am balancing a checkbook, oops, bounce the check. It doesn't mean I'm less perfect, quote unquote. It doesn't mean I'm less perfection, quote unquote. It means in the expression of my humanity, my personality, there are going to be errors and mistakes. And those errors and mistakes do not make me any less perfection. I am perfectly imperfect in my perfection right now, as are you. So gently breathe that in. Right here and right now, you are perfection incarnating itself as you, even when you make mistakes. See, that removes the need to blame and finger point and scapegoat. Simply be accountable. I made a mistake. Let me move the decimal point. Let me move the comma. Let me balance my checkbook differently, more effectively, without the blame and the shame and the judgment. Dr. Holmes says, when we let the love that is within us go out to the God who is, he says, in all people, that is incarnating as all people and all life and all that is, creation itself. For example, this pen, it too is God. So how do I gently hold this in reverence, gently use it for, whatever it's being used for, gently respect it, hold this in the same regard that I would hold any sacred object. So when we let the love that is expressing itself in, through, and as us go out and radiate to all of creation, which God is, then we are loving God with all of our heart and with all of our soul and with all of our mind. Because we are now in a place of recognizing that the Spirit, which is incarnating in, through, and as us, is the same Spirit that is incarnating in, through, and as all others that we meet. This is what it means to love our neighbors as ourselves. To recognize and see God in that tree and honor it and love it and appreciate it. The neighbor across the street who never speaks, never says hello, no matter what. To still hold love in your heart and your mind and your soul, your spirit, with all, even though. Because otherwise you are withholding your love, and therefore your love is conditional. And if your love is conditional, then you are expressing God in a conditional manner. You are making God conditional in the way that you embody and express that divinity. So let's spread the love. And in so doing, what we are doing is spreading gentleness and kindness and understanding. Because what we are doing is honoring and celebrating the truth of our being. Only the gentle are ever really strong, according to James Dean. And I would agree with him. The gentle people are the ones who truly have strength and power. Gandhi said, nonviolent resistance implies the very opposite of weakness. See, judgment and criticism, scapegoating is weakness. Defiance combined with retaliatory acceptance of repression from one's opponent is active, not passive. When someone offends you, do you feel the desire to retaliate? Tit for tat, pay them back. It requires strength, and there is nothing automatic or intuitive about the resoluteness required for us using this energy of nonviolent methods, nonviolent resistance, nonviolent living in the scope of political struggle and the quest for truth. Now, I would say that when we are, remember that one slide where Dr. Holmes talked about reaching back to that place of pulsating, knowing the truth, knowing the reality of the divine, the reality of God. When we are operating from that space, I would venture to say there is an intuitive nature that expresses love and compassion. And the idea of nonviolence doesn't even exist there because the idea of violence doesn't exist there. So rather than nonviolent resistance when we are moving from that space and that energy, then it is peaceful resistance. It is compassionate resistance. Well, wait, pause. Well, what are we resisting? We're resisting in the same way that if I put on a flame resistant coat, the coat isn't resisting the fire. The coat simply is, and fire is unable to harm it. When we are moving from this space of compassion and gentleness and true power, our very being resists that which is not like itself. Therefore, there is power. Gentleness is the truth of our being. Kindness is the truth of our being. This perfection and wholeness and completeness is the truth of our being. And when we are aligned with and operating, embodying that truth, then peacefulness, equity, justice, oneness is what we express in our lives and in the world. The Dalai Lama says the moment you develop a sense of concern for others, you realize that just like ourselves, they also want happiness. They also want satisfaction. If we were to select one of the most heinous serial killers, doesn't matter, dictator, doesn't matter, whomever, doesn't matter, that same individual is seeking happiness and satisfaction. But because their mental equivalent is skewed for whatever reason, their version of happiness and satisfaction being conditional is about that which is non-life affirming. But the moment any of us develops a true sense of empathy, caring, concern, and compassion for any of them, we realize they're seeking happiness. They're seeking to be loved. They're seeking to be understood. They're seeking a sense of satisfaction in their lives. Now, if they're seeking that, but this is what they're doing, then let's trace back to their consciousness and their mental equivalent to identify what exactly are they doing here, believing here, that is causing this. No need to blame. Blame won't get us there. Accountability will. When we step into the energy of ceasefire, ceasefire applies to all forms of warfare. The grudge that's held against the parent or a child or a neighbor, ceasefire. The feeling of it's their fault, they did it, ceasefire. I'm just such a pathetic and pitiful person that it's ceasefire. Stop firing the slings and arrows of blame and criticism and judgment. Put all weapons down. Weapons of consciousness and mental equivalence that hurt and harm others and ourselves. Cease. Put them all down. Because when we are willing to do that, then we are willing to step into the space that creates peacefulness around the world, because it's in our hearts, it's in our relationships, it's in our community, it's in our politics and education. It exists within all of this. Then it also exists within the air and the water and the food. It exists to such a degree that war and even the concept of warfare is made extinct. When we do that, then we truly are creating a world that works for all. But we have to be willing to stop. We have to be willing to recognize that it's not just about us. As Mamie Till, the mother of Emmett Till, said, whatever happens to any of us in the world had better be the business of us all. If there are people dying in the Congo, and here I am in Chicago, what's going on with them ain't none of my business. I ain't there, but it is. Because whatever happens to any aspect of God affects all of it. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. None of us are free until all of us are free. Fannie Lou Hamer. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my gender nonconforming siblings' keeper? No, I am them, and they are me. The time is always right to do what is right. Are we ready to do what is right? Are we ready to gently realize that we are caught, as Dr. King says, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. We are all tied in a single garment of destiny. We are all tied, connected together, because there is only one life. Whatever affects anyone directly affects all indirectly. Breathe. When we practice the science of mind and spirit, not as a separate activity, but as the very life we live, it gifts us the means and the reason to be gentle in the world. It also gives us the awareness that this gentleness is not a passive, nor is it a weak power, but rather it is a transformative powerhouse of divine grace and authority as individualized incarnations of God. As we move through the world as the embodiment of gentleness, we, the avatars and the bodhisattvas of the world, demonstrate what it means to embody a world that works for all, to express the energy of a world that works for all, to manifest a world that works for all. We are the catalyst that shift. We are the catalyst that dream. We are the catalyst that build. And we are the catalyst that become the new collective consciousness. Breathe. Today's affirmation declaration, I will say it first, and if it resonates with you, say it with me on the second go round. All of my relationships are living expressions of love made form. Together. All of my relationships are living expressions of love made form. So it is. Remember to celebrate and honor Earth Day once again. And the importance of honoring that which is the divine in, through, and as all. This week's journal questions or study group questions. Number 1, how will you practice active compassion in your relationships? What would it look like for you to be more compassionate? At least 2 examples. Number 2, as you are more aware of your thoughts, belief, and judgment, would you say that they are more friend or foe? How do they then affect the relationship you have with yourself? Friends, family, neighbors. How about how they affect the relationship you have with the unhoused person on the street, or that person who is anti-Black, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ, or is a person who is in leadership and is anti-woman's body autonomy, etc.? How are your thoughts, beliefs, and judgments showing up and affecting the relationship you have with them as well? Number 3, how are you gentle with those in your life, including yourself? And what does this gentleness look like? Who are the people that are easiest for you to love? And who are the most difficult for you to love? And what makes the easiest people the easiest people? And what makes the difficult people the most difficult people? And lastly, how can you love and be gentle even while not loving someone? You don't have to like them to have love and gentleness. Breathe as we enter into that space of prayer, that space of simply knowing and recognizing the isness and allness of God's source spirit. There's only one power and only one presence, and what it is, each of us is. As Dr. Holmes says, and as Nona Brooks says, whatever is true about God is true about you. So this infinite gentle giantness is the truth of my being. It is who and what I am. And so I express it. I live, move, and have my beingness in alignment with this truth that is my truth, this perfection of myself, my self, capital S self, that which is the divine. I live in divine alignment, divine cooperation, divine collaboration with myself. And in that, I need not judge myself. I need not scapegoat myself. And if I don't do it for myself, I need not do it for any self. There is no other in that space of love, compassion, and gentleness. Because in that space, I understand and I embody that which is namaste, that which is the truth of my being, that which is the divine, incarnating in, through, and as me, sees and recognizes itself in, through, and as all. And it loves itself. It is kind to itself. It is compassionate to itself. It is gentle to itself. And so knowing that I, right here and right now, actively embody this and live, move, and have my beingness from that powerful place of truth, I recognize that the law receives and acts accordingly. That all that has been shared, all that is being prayed, all of this is already in, through, and as the very activity of the universe. It is already answered prayer. It is already done. It is already thought, word, and deed of my life. And what is true of me is true for everyone gathering here now, whether gathering live with this service or watching it later. Thought, word, and deed, gentleness. Thought, word, and deed, compassion. Thought, word, and deed, the perfection of my being. Thought, word, and deed, love made form in all of my relationships. That is answered prayer. That's what is so. And so it is. And so it is. Namaste, blessings, much appreciation. Remember to celebrate yourself as part of Earth Day. Celebrate yourself just because. Just celebrate. Blessings.